Light painting is one of the most interesting types of photography. There are some magical elements to it that really intrigue me. With that said, I'm going to share with you step by step how to create interesting shots with your camera or even your smartphone, just like this. Creating a light painted image is relatively simple if you follow some basic rules. First, you're going to want to make sure that the area that you're taking the photos is relatively dark. The reason for that is that your typical exposures will take around 8 to 10 seconds. So if you have lots of bright lights in your scene, they're probably going to be super bright and blown out. Ideally, you want the light that you're using to create the light painting to be the brightest lights within your scene. Second, it's important to put your camera into a manual mode, as well as using manual focus. You can imagine that with a dark setting, using autofocus is going to be near impossible. So if you're taking a portrait, for example, you'll want the subject to stand in the spot that they're going to be photographed, and then you're going to dial in your manual focus. Once you've done that, your subject has to stay in that exact spot and ideally not move for the entirety of the 8 to 10 seconds that it takes to create your shot. The third thing is that you'll need a light of some sort. You could use any kind of light, a flashlight, whatever you have that's bright enough. For this video, I'm going to be using a pixel stick, which is a programmable LED stick that can project different types of patterns. It's pretty fancy, but definitely not something that you need if you want to get started with light painting. Start off with an LED flashlight and learn the fundamentals before going out and buying specialized tools like a pixel stick. A bonus tip here is that you'll want whoever is going to be moving the light source around the frame to be wearing all black, just to ensure that they aren't lit up and that they show up in your image. Now let's talk about the camera setup. You could use any camera that allows you to control your shutter speeds, as again, we're wanting to get about an 8 to 10 second shutter speed. For this demonstration, I'm going to be using my A7SIII with the 24mm f1.4 G Master lens, as well as the new Xperia 1 Mark III with its 24mm f1.7 lens. I chose this specific devices or these devices for a few reasons, mainly because they create fantastic quality images in low light situations, which is what light painting really is all about. Not to mention that I can shoot in RAW with both devices in the event that I want to mess around with any of the images in Photoshop later on. To get things started, I'm going to find an interesting scene and set my cameras up on a tripod. I'm using a hot shoe mount to place my Xperia 1 Mark III on top of my A7SIII to minimize the amount of gear that I need to bring with me for this demonstration. For my camera settings, I'm going to set the shutter speed to 8 seconds. My aperture, I'm going to shoot wide open on each camera, and my ISO to 100. If you have a remote to trigger your camera, that would be ideal since you don't want to move the camera at all while the image is being taken. If you don't have one, you could set the timer to 10 seconds so that when you press the shutter, it gives you a few seconds to get everything in place. With the following settings dialed into my camera and Xperia device, I'm going to take a photo and see what the exposure looks like. If everything looks good, then it's time to start light painting. Have your subject stand within the scene and press your shutter button. Once you hear the 8-second exposure has begun, you could turn on your light source and begin to make whatever patterns or shapes that you want to make. Be sure to go back to your camera after you've taken that first shot and play back your image to make sure that things are still looking good. Now that you've got an idea of how this works, check out some of the images that I was able to make using the A7SIII and the Xperia 1 Mark III. All right, so I'm here in the studio and I'm gonna break everything down for you so you know exactly how I'm doing this. I've got the A7SIII right now with the Xperia 1 Mark III. I've got a 24mm G Master lens on the camera, and I'm using the 24mm lens on the Xperia, so we should get something that looks fairly similar. Now, I have an 8-second exposure, just like I explained to you in the tutorial. You're going to want to have at least an 8 to 10 second exposure. Gives you time to walk through the frame. The shorter that shutter speed is, let's say if it was a 1-second exposure, you'd have to run through the frame with the light, and it's just not enough time to create that light pattern. So 8 seconds should be plenty. ISO 100. The aperture on the Xperia 1 is at an f1.7. I'm going to use f1.8 on the G Master lens, so it might look a tiny bit different exposure wise, but it should be good enough. So that's going to be the setup. The subject, my friend Chris, is here, and he's going to be playing the piano. And what I'm going to end up doing is we're going to start the exposure, and I'm going to use my light wand to basically light a pattern. I'm going to keep it a secret until you see the images, but you'll get to see what that looks like. Now, the rest of this video is going to look a little bit weird because we're going to have to turn off the light that I'm using right now. This studio needs to be in pretty much pure darkness, which for you as the viewer means that you're not going to be able to see anything. So what we're going to do is, using the FX3, we're going to shoot at a really high ISO. So the rest of the video is probably going to look a little bit grainy, but you'll be able to see what I'm doing. You'll be able to see Chris and get a little bit more of a feel for how this is taking place. So with that being said, check this out. This is a style of photography that is so much fun, and I'm definitely going to be doing some more of this in the future. If you try this technique out, drop a link to your Instagram images in the comment section, and I might feature some of those images in an upcoming video on this topic of light painting. If you have any questions after testing this out, be sure to come back and leave them in the comment section below so I can address them in the next video. Subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed it, and before you head out, be sure to check out this video that you see here on the screen. See you there.